Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming in. Really appreciate everyone showing up. This is kind of the first time I've had a chance to do one of these at Accelerate. I get a lot of privilege in doing some of these opportunities, but yeah, a little bit nervous, so stay with me. It's reminiscent of my wedding speech a little bit, so I'll try my best to keep on track here. But hopefully the conversation today is going to be a little bit more interesting, which is really going to be about full funnel measurement. So helping all of us understand how are brands thinking about measurement today, and how are they helping understand how their advertisement is helping their customers move down the funnel. I'm going to be joined by a couple of experts, Gabe and Elizabeth in a moment, who'll join me on stage and talk you through the applications of full funnel measurement. And nice to meet everyone. I lead product marketing for measurement at Amazon Ads, and I'll be walking you through this today. So let's think about full funnel measurement. And for us at Amazon, that starts with awareness to action. As many of you know, the customer journey is incredibly complex. It has changed quite a lot and evolved quite a lot over the years. Right now, there's many ad touch points that our customers may see, and at the same time, there's many different types of ads that we can serve them to move down the funnel. All of this becomes really, really difficult when measuring the results of our advertising and what that really means for our brands. And so we need to do it a little bit more intelligently, more precisely than we ever done before. And some of the challenges that come through that we encounter as marketers is really understanding where exactly are these customers that are coming from for our brands. Which combinations of different channels, touch points, are influencing them to move down the funnel. When they are moving down the funnel, we have campaigns out there that are trying to achieve immediate results. So how are we attributing our results to those campaigns? How do we measure the immediate performance that we can expect to get back? Once we do get that performance, we also have to switch our mindset to thinking about the long term. It's not only about those immediate results. We understand that our advertising has long-term impact on their brand, but today we're going to understand a little bit about what are some of those tools that can help you really project what that value means outside of those traditional attribution windows. We talked about this at Unboxed a lot last year, this concept of full funnel measurement, and I'm going to do a quick recap before we accept the panelists on stage to speak through what those three solutions are. And those solutions for us, as a recap, are conversion path reporting, multi-touch attribution, and long-term sales. Each of these solutions can be used in conjunction with each other to give you a more holistic perspective of your customer's journey and be used to understand how your advertisement is helping them move down the funnel. We start our journey with full funnel measurement on conversion path reporting. To understand our complex customer journey, we should start by visualizing what it looks like. Conversion path reporting helps you do just that. In the console, you can visualize exactly which ad touch points for different sets of campaigns are actually moving your customers down the funnel. Once you have that visualization, you can understand and take away what are those types of ads that are going to be served them in which sequence to help them get to the conversion event that matters for you. And when you're ready to then buy a campaign with that insight, you probably want to think a little bit about those immediate results we talked about. That's where multi-touch attribution comes in. Using thousands of randomized control trials, we're able to precisely understand which of those touch points that conversion path reporting visualized are contributing and influencing your customer to move down the funnel. It helps you uncover hidden opportunities that weren't necessarily very prevalent to you using what industry standard is today, which is last touch attribution. Once you've ran that campaign, long-term sales is that projector. It's that simulation that understands, once you have acquired that first new-to-brand customer, what that means for your business long-term. So long-term sales is going to measure the impact that your campaigns are having during that attribution window with all the brand engagements that you're driving, whether that's detailed page view, branded searches, all the ones that are not the immediate sale, and it's going to project the value of those engagements over the next 12 months. This is incredibly important as you have a full funnel advertising campaign that probably is going to buy ad units that aren't going to result in immediate conversions. You need to understand what is the long-term impact of those ad units so that you can get a more holistic perspective of your advertising performance. And with that, I would love to invite some of the experts that have done this in practice to the stage. So I'm glad to invite Elizabeth from Tinuiti. Nice to meet you, Elizabeth. And Gabe from Flywheel. Fantastic. How are you guys doing?
Great.
Yeah. Did everybody enjoy the climb up here? I feel like I just like crested Rainier, and it's like cold enough in here too.
It is. They've kept it nice and cold, which is really, really enjoyable. Well, thank you so much for both of you joining in today. One of the things we want to talk about is what exactly is like that biggest measurement challenge that you've encountered when you're thinking about full funnel measurement? So Gabe, we'll start with you. We spoke a little bit about the 3 solutions, but in practice, what have you encountered with your customers that this has been the biggest challenge that they've dealt with?
Yep. So I think it's kind of the biggest gap that you see is like there's like all of this time that leads up to the last click, and then all this time after the first purchase. And so all the sales are currently attributed on like a last touch first purchase basis. So the person clicks the final ad and then they make that purchase. But one of the big challenges is that which you sort of talked about here is like, okay, how do I actually properly kind of see where everybody is? How do I evaluate each of those touch points? And then sort of what happens after. And I know that there are some seller softwares out there that like let you see, hey, what is my customer value? Who's purchasing again? But oftentimes those are quite disjointed from ads. And so what you've talked about really kind of brings that together a little bit more so that you can evaluate the value of each touch point as well as sort of the long-term value of those customers right where you're making those bid adjustments, right where you're choosing which ASINs to showcase and where you're setting those budgets.
Absolutely. Elizabeth, what about your perspective? What has been Tinuity's biggest measurement challenge when it comes to full funnel measurement?
I think it's not even just like a Tinuity measurement challenge. It's like all of our measurement challenges, right? So like technically speaking, I oversee multiple retailers at Tinuity. So not just Amazon, but I also work with like Walmart, Instacart, Target, Kroger, and I came from a Google background. I know, all of the things. Can't make up my mind. But when it comes to something like this, the measurement gap really is a business problem. And we think about it from like what we're used to versus like what we expect. But if we are comped and we comp our people based on a channel or based on an ad type or based on this box, people behave accordingly, right? What gets rewarded gets done. So I would say like currently our biggest measurement gap is actually how we attribute that credit and then how we reward the actions from those outcomes. So I would say like it's a Tinuity challenge, it's a business challenge, it's an everyone challenge. And one of the things I like about working with Amazon is of course the digital aspect, right? So we can tie pretty easily to who that last touch was or who that person was. So like for example, Amazon Prime, obviously, sure. We might have it delivered other places. You guys gotta stop cracking down on that. Like that's my thing. But Walmart measures at the household level because they can't get down to the user level, excuse me, the same way. So when you think about like Amazon Prime, the ability to consume the content, from a Thursday night football to seeing it on screen to a QR code to a sponsored search, whatever it is, to your door in 2 hours, that's pretty powerful.
Exactly. And I love what you said about what we're all held accountable to. And I'd love to go deeper in that and really address the elephant in the room. Like most of us, when we buy campaigns with Amazon ads, we're almost held accountable to a ROAS metric as my primary KPI, right? And I would love your perspective in helping us and navigating us and teaching us and guiding us. What are some of those strategies, Elizabeth, that you've helped brands understand that ROAS isn't the only metric of success?
I mean, we're all in ROAS jail, right? Gabe and I agreed. We're just going to call it jail for right now. Because let's face it, in the absence of something that you can trust or that you can bring to your CFO and they don't laugh you out of the room, that you have to go with that. So what we encourage essentially is like you've got to pick something else, something a little more upper funnel. That could be like, in particular, we like new to brand is a good one, especially if you're thinking about like a growth-minded business plan, or how are you going to acquire new customers, reach new customers. Tinuity, we have this whole thing. It's called love growth, hate waste. On the one hand, I want to find the waste in my ROAS and my efficiency, but on the other hand, you can't grow at the same time. So you need to be able to balance those things out.
Awesome. Yeah, in terms of balancing out all of those engagements that could be contributing and moving your customers down the journey, Gabe, would love your perspective on that question. Like, how have you and Flywheel helped navigate brands of just looking at immediate results from their campaigns to actually seeing the whole holistic impact?
Yep. So I think everybody here in the room is like typically like ladders up to one of three goals, which is like sales, share, or profit. And so like I started my seller business in 2016. So like I'm very familiar with like every dollar you spend is a dollar that's coming directly out of your pockets, whether that's towards inventory, whether that's towards people, whether that's towards shipping or anything else. And so like ultimately, like there are kind of two levers that you have when it comes to one of those three metrics. Really, it's price, how much are you going to charge for your item, and it's ads, how much are you going to spend to sort of promote. And so we'll put price aside because we're talking about ads. And so that like really leads you into this place of like ACOS or tacos, which is like, okay, like it makes total sense that I should think about this as a percentage of my profit. The challenge is you end up in ROAS jail, which is that they're like really good guardrails, but they're actually really poor KPIs to optimize to, because ultimately you're just gonna optimize again to that last touch sale. And so one of the kind of big paradigm shifts that we're sort of starting to try and push people's thinking on is moving towards an MTA mindset, which then you know, as you said, is sort of reassigning the credit, the sales credit, to the ads that influence that purchase, not just the last one that took credit for it. And you know, we're really seeing good results when we optimize to that, because like it allows the sort of retail business to drive what's happening based on all those different customer touch points.
Absolutely. And on a similar note, sometimes there's ad products out there like search that maybe are more deliverable or towards immediate results. But Gabe, in your perspective, like one of the things that we understand as marketers that if we want to reach new audiences, we have to invest in video and display, right? And if we hold ourselves accountable to those immediate results, those supply or inventory is not necessarily going to naturally lead to immediate results. So walk us through that. Like, how are you helping them digest investing and build confidence in investing in video and display while still achieving the performance that they want from their ads?
Absolutely. I mean, like thinking again, kind of like taking our shifting our brains out of last touch is really the most important thing, because there will be a sponsored product between a TV ad and the add to cart button. We can't avoid that. And so what we think about is that consumer path reporting, both what is kind of pre-baked that you have just like in console today, and what's in AMC to think about all those different touch points. And so we did a case study where we looked at the results coming out of Thursday Night Football. So if you show an ad on Thursday Night Football across, in this case, 7 different games, how does it compare to not showing that Thursday Night Football ad? How does that behavior compare? Number one, 70% of the reach was incremental, which means that 70% of the people who saw the ad on Thursday Night Football had not been exposed to another ad by that brand before. It was the very first touch point. But also the propensity to purchase after seeing that ad, depending on sort of funnel stage, these are all new to brand customers, was anywhere between 2 and 5x depending on their stage after they saw that Thursday Night Football ad compared to our control holdout group, which did not see that ad. And so I know that not everybody here is like in the DSP purchasing Thursday Night Football, but there's options around sponsored TV where you can sort of set up a campaign. You can have a really low budget cap and just sort of test it out and start to look at that conversion path reporting. You know, how are customers first interacting with your brand, and start thinking about that whole entire journey from that customer-centric view.
Absolutely. Visualizing the customer journey, as we talked about with conversion path reporting, is paramount. It really helps us see the influence of those upper funnel and mid funnel products towards that bottom funnel conversion. Elizabeth, would love to get your perspective on this problem. How have you navigated this question of showing value of video and display that isn't necessarily immediate for your brands?
I mean, okay, so first and foremost, everybody's so like paying attention. This is so nice. This is like the day one effect, right? That's right, I got the Amazon pun in there.
Yeah.
All right, so, see, you didn't even almost see it coming. All right, so what I wanna do is I wanna give you like video, right? Display or video, online video, whatever it is. Like one of the things about video in particular, Tinuiti, is obviously we're pretty bullish on it, but more than anything else, you gotta think about what the future and the future consumer. Who loves video? Gen Z loves video. Who expects video? Gen Z does. Who's buying power? So when we think about how that's going to be in the media mix going forward, absolutely. Is the ROAS on that going to be great every time? Oh, probably not. So how do we then go to bring that into a larger strategy? And one of the ways that we did that, and I'm super proud that we get to actually say this because it came public yesterday, is Tinuiti is a finalist for a seasonal campaign for the Amazon Ads Awards. Yeah.
Amazing.
They told me I can't do a victory lap. I have to stay seated. Okay. But if you would like to, yeah, you can clap for that. But if you would like to read about it, it is on the Tinuiti site, and we actually go into a fair amount of detail on how that campaign lays out. So I do highly recommend taking a look at that, because primarily what they did was we were looking a lot at like conversion path reporting. And one of the things that they were determining, because we're trying to get this customer to invest in upper funnel, to invest in video. And we know that you can't just flip it on, right? You have to make the assets, right? So how do we start to tell that story? And what we found on the conversion path was 13 out of the 15, I think it was conversion paths, included some form of video, whether or not that was a sponsored brand video, that was online, or STV. So that showed us that the customer does need and is consuming and engaging with that. And what we ended up seeing was a 40% year-over-year lift for them this is where the seasonal part comes in, Q4, which obviously coffee is a pretty competitive category to begin with, but they also got something very cool. It's this thing called the bestseller rank.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're pretty happy.
That's great. Those are incredible results, and thank you for walking us through that. Those are exactly the kind of stories that we want each and every one of you in the room to like get an experience to understand one day. Like when it comes to actually visualizing that customer journey using conversion path reporting, it gives you that confidence to maybe invest in ad units that you may not have bought before, but you know are invaluable to your business, like video and display. And so, ensuring that the measurement points into you, spending your resources in doing that is very, very key. I want to now switch gears to thinking about more of the long term beyond the immediate term, like we kind of talked about before, and how you can see better performance of your campaigns investing into long-term results. So Elizabeth, we'll stay with you in terms of kind of taking action from those insights of long-term results. Like, what are some of those planning and optimization day-to-day campaign actions that you feel are best to take based on these insights?
And again, this is a newer tool, right, essentially, or a new way of looking at it, at least from the Amazon lens. But in the world of Google, obviously, if you're familiar with that at all, they have Google Analytics, GA4. So multi-touch attribution is something that has been in platform for years. And so but of course, it is put in it is best from a D2C capability or capacity, right? So if you have the D2C, you can obviously see that over time. And then how do you take those kind of insights and move that into your larger strategy? Same question comes for us also when we look at social commerce. So social commerce is a great upper funnel driver, like obviously above the Amazon funnel, sorry, but it's got to start somewhere, right? Like TikTok, it's a thing. Meta, huge. One of the biggest channels that we see today from a video consumption standpoint, it's YouTube. Where does Gen Z spend most of their time? YouTube. So how do we then take that kind of touch point or understand over time things like long-term sales? So long-term sales isn't just going to be an Amazon term or like the way that we look at it. We have to pull that all the way up and out into where demand is happening or interaction. So specifically though for Amazon, how we bring it to life, we have a client that did a big campaign takeover around Prime Day. This was very expensive, as any campaign takeover can be. The return on ad spend, if we only looked at return on ad spend, was $1. Now, I don't want to go to the CFO and be like, yeah, we got $1, slightly less, depending on what day you looked at. So how do you really start to tell that story? Is that the answer? Well, the category is CPG. It is probably not the answer. It means that they're probably going to consume it again. So how do we then look at long-term sales for that? And most importantly, if this is something that's going to be consumed again, can we look at subscribe and save? So by using their historical data, their historical conversion data prior to that campaign and kind of extrapolating that out and saying, hey, we know that when customers engage at this level, at this volume, that eventually this percentage is probably going to convert to a subscribe and save. Now, we don't have the final, I would say, like readout on that because Prime Day was just in July, and it does take a little bit of time before we get there, but that is kind of how you want to think about it, to be able to articulate the bigger value on something like an investment like that.
I love that. Taking that omni-channel perspective and understanding exactly how your customer journey is, not only on Amazon, but off Amazon as well, and expanding both above and beyond where the funnel has been defined for you. Gabe, I wanted to get your perspective on this question. So in terms of taking the insights on those day-to-day optimization around planning, or how to invest my next dollar, how do I make it more efficient than it is today, how are you using some of those long-term views to influence that conversation?
Yep. We'd be remiss not to mention Amazon Marketing Cloud, of course, but really, again, it's like shifting your mindset to this customer-centric view of what's happening versus this campaign-centric view, and then how you use LTS to tie it back to campaign actions. So just as Elizabeth was saying, looking at the different kind of cohorts of shoppers that are on Amazon, how much are they worth depending on where they enter the funnel, and then sort of, how much do they repurchase, when do they repurchase, how often, and sort of how does that change based on when they enter the funnel, whether it was New Year, New You, or Prime Day, whether it was any of the numerous additional sales holidays that Amazon has recently invented. But what you can then do is say, okay, how am I going to optimize to customers who look like they might be high propensity to purchase, convert, and stay and be loyal? And so there's any sort of different way that you can kind of like twist the data from AMC that's really useful. But then additionally, bringing people in, again, it's like optimizing to MTA, which is a more customer-centric view, a more shopper-centric view that allows us to be able to redefine kind of how we bid against customers based on wherever they might be in the funnel, not just that last touch. And so we did that for a client. We had 2 campaigns that were like $4,000 in spend. And when we optimized towards MTA instead of LTA, so your traditional sales metric that you see when you like first log in, we saw sales increase 64 and 62% respectively. And so for that client, that amounted to like 5 figures additional sales.
Wow.
Just by optimizing away from that last touch and towards that multi-touch. And so really like that's just one example of what's happened. Of course, it's not in GA yet. So we are hoping to see additional really good results out of that. And we're excited to keep testing.
Amazing. We're excited to have you testing. It's kind of like some of the takeaways there. Like what I really like what you said is kind of using that clean room technology to bring that customizability, bring that flexibility to get a little bit more precise on your day-to-day actions, and starting from some of these built in turnkey tools to then get an initial idea of where to invest your time. I want to pull on this thread around actionability a little bit more. I think everyone in the room understands that ads are a means to an end, right? We're in the business of buying ads, but we're really in the business of building businesses, right? And so it's not just about campaign performance around actionability. So Gabe, in your perspective, like thinking from that lens, are there other ways your teams are taking some of these full funnel measurement insights, not only to influence the campaigns they're buying with Amazon ads, but really taking it to the next level and building better businesses on Amazon?
Yep. So I think like when we turn into like, okay, actionable steps, like what do I do when I leave this room? There are a few things you can do, which is number one, just like turn to AMC audiences and begin to apply those bid boosts to your sponsored products and sponsored brands campaigns. Like that's like can be like quite a complex and scary exercise as well. So like the other thing that you can do is within the campaign settings within the ads console, there are 2 different bid boost options. There's new to brand and high value shoppers is like ways that you can increase your bids specifically towards those shoppers. And so when we talk about translating from insights into action, this is really how we're beginning to adjust our approach day to day, again, to this kind of customer centric view, because those new to brand shoppers are the shoppers that net grow your business. Those are your incremental shoppers. And similarly, those high value shoppers, as we take that long-term lens, are the shoppers that you want to make sure that your products show up for at all parts of the shopping journey.
Amazing. Elizabeth, Penny, for your thoughts from a 1,000-mile perspective, you're building a business on Amazon, you're buying ads to help you accelerate that. What are some of the insights that you can also take away from full funnel management that can help you build a better business on Amazon?
One of our biggest, I think, and Flywheel has this too, is one of our biggest investments at Tinuiti in terms of like a commerce business is that we have an operations arm of the business. So it's just, so there's ops and there's media together, ideally, all the time. We try. Right, so obviously, again, if you're in your silos, this is one of the first places I would recommend starting to look into. So, for example, in Seller Central, there is the brand analytics information, and within that, there is also customer loyalty analytics. I don't know why everything is named with analytics after the name. You guys gotta help me with this. But really, what you can understand in there is whether or not there are audiences that are in high performing, right, or hibernating, or at risk. And what you can do from there is then take those audiences and say, I'm going to say AMC. I think we need to have an AMC jar.
We do.
Like we need to just start, but it has to be like quarters, because otherwise I can't afford it. Because that is the other thing I would say, like from an AMC, like if you're not already engaging or looking at how you're going to use Amazon Marketing Cloud in your business today, you should be. Because then we take those audiences from the operations side, understanding like, again, that customer loyalty, And then you can change that, put that into, from an AMC perspective, you build those audiences, and then you can target or suppress depending on what it is that's your goal. So if you have high performant audiences that you want to go after and maintain, maybe you want to turn them into subscribe and save customers, and then you've got your at-risk folks that maybe haven't bought in a while, and then you've got hibernating folks that haven't even bought even longer. Do you want to suppress them, or do you want to try and bring them back in, or try and bring them back in with, like, say, a coordinated campaign or a creative to match? So it is one of those things where retail readiness, we'd like to talk about it, and we like to talk about the media, but one of the biggest questions I get from my colleagues that work on the Google and the Meta and the TikTok side is explain to me the difference between the commerce operations and the commerce media teams. And
Right.
the easiest way I can put it, one gets the stuff on the shelf and the other one tells everybody it's there. So if you work together like that, it can be incredibly performant.
It's incredible. And yeah, our clean room technology that was mentioned here, like, as you not only use great applications of all the use cases you saw on the screen today and what we talked about, but it also gives you that ability to bring in your retail information and really understand how your audience is not only engaging with your advertising, but also engaging with your products as well. And Elizabeth, if there's, just to wrap up today's session and help the audience take away something meaningful from today, what was one key takeaway for you as you kind of dove into full funnel measurement?
I think the biggest key takeaway is I want to say thanks for being here, because that was a lot of escalators. I live here, I'm from Seattle, and I did not even know that we had that much in here. I just drive by it on the freeway. But really what it is when you go back to your businesses, kind of like going back to the first question of what do you have to change in the business? What do you have to change organizationally, functionally, whatever it is? And then of course, one of the things I always advise my teams on is it's one thing to like change the whole business, and it is another to pick something that is perhaps a little more in your control. And I say, as long as you can get within 80% of your control, that is something that you should try to change. And I would say pick a metric for this holiday season: MTA, LTS, CPR, whatever other acronyms Amazon has made for us this season. I also hear there's a PBDD now. Okay, Prime Big Deal Days, right? I think that just came out. So pick it and stick to it for a statistically significant amount of time. 2 weeks is not enough. But by definition, long-term sales means long-term sales. MTA, that's my favorite, honestly, at this place, or new to brand. Like, what is it that you're going to put towards a greater goal? So if your greater goal this Q4 is growth, what is the metric that most aligns with that you think is doable within your powers to prove out and be able to bring back next, like, let's say February at the end of Q4 and go, yep, this is what we're gonna do. Or, nope, but I'm gonna go with yep.
Amazing. I love that. I love that confidence we're able to give the audience today. Gabe, what about yourself? Like, if we were to wrap up, what is that, a key takeaway you feel like we should all take away?
So I think Elizabeth said it well, obviously, like, test a ton. And so the other place where I'd really push people to kind of adjust their thinking is really through that customer-centric lens. If you were, like, one of the things that Amazon is very good at is like kind of fitting you into the structure that they have invented, the way that sponsored products or sponsored brands campaigns are built. You pick your ASINs, you pick your keywords, and like you send it off, and then you match type bids, budgets, whatever. And like that's not actually how customers find the ads. You sort of have to start working backwards from who is searching, who is shopping, who is converting. And so if you like start to change your thinking towards this customer-centric view, well, how would you change your approach? And so how would you use audiences differently? How would you measure differently? You'd start measuring on cohorts of audiences. You wouldn't just measure like campaign performance. And then, finally, from a return perspective, like this concept of return on customer. What is my total cost per acquisition on a customer basis, and what is my return on that customer? And so we're evolving our products, Perpetua and Flywheel Commerce Cloud, to really think in that way. And so when you look at these cohorts of people, the shoppers who are building your business, you uncover kind of a new way to approach building campaigns, a new way to approach audiences, a new way to approach measurement. And we think ultimately that's where it's going as search continues to get more personalized, as Rufus enters the chat, like all of these things, like understanding sort of from a shopper perspective what's happening, I think is a really important kind of mental switch.
Absolutely. I love what both of you said today, which is about embracing the change, not being afraid to embrace the change, but also getting closer to your end customer, right? I think all of us can understand and relate to this. There's only so much time in the day. But one of the things that I would encourage all of you to take away is we've released a lot of information today that helps you get closer to your customers, and really don't make assumptions about how they interact with your ads, but use these full funnel measurement solutions to really get deeper and more precise into what they can build for your business. But thank you everyone for joining. We have a QR code and we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to scan it and provide us feedback, but really appreciate you and best of luck for the rest of the event. Thank you.